My name is John Mauser. I'm a retired school teacher. I taught for 35 years. I live in Lower Mount Bethel Township. I am the project manager for the Martins Jacoby Watershed Association. I'm the project manager, land acquisition, and supervisor for Lower Mount Bethel Township. I've been involved with environmental projects for a little over 40 years, involving stream bank stabilization, fish habitat, addressing flood issues, addressing stormwater management. The Welcome Center is a 36-acre site. The unique thing about the Welcome Center is that all stormwater that enters this site does not leave the site, except through evaporation, transpiration, or infiltration. This was something we needed to model for our community. And we'll talk more about that modeling in a moment. You have a picture of a tributary to the Ohotton Creek. All that cobble and gravel came down that stream in 2004. The stream is normally about 18 inches wide. Some of the cobble that was moved was 15 inches in diameter. This is what's facing Lower Mount Bethel townships and a lot of other communities. That the weather has changed. We have more severe rain events, which lead to stormwater events and flooding. So this is one thing we're facing in our community. So the stream is carrying all types of water and gravel and cobble. It's basically only 18 inches to 2 feet wide at max during normal water conditions. It was able to rip out the gentleman's macadam driveway in this particular picture. So you have this small stream, 18 inches wide, during a high rain event, doing all types of damage. Another small tributary to the Ohotton Creek. This is about 3 feet wide and about 6 inches deep. Should be no problem, right? You can see there's a crack around the culvert pipe. The water went through that crack, collapsed the roadway. Now this is a stream that's 3 feet wide, 6 inches deep max. So these are the issues we're facing with stormwater runoff flooding events. Those tributaries feed into larger streams. We're looking at the Martins Creek Belvedere Highway where it intersects the Pews Ferry Road. Well, we have a bit of a flooding issue. Now, so the flood events are affecting public transportation areas, bridges, roads, other public infrastructure, and is causing a few minor problems for homeowners. Flooding is becoming increasingly common in Lower Mount Bethel Township and Northampton County. Now, the results of the flooding are public infrastructure being destroyed, private infrastructure being impacted severely, and let's see what happens to the streams. Here's Jim Wilson, who's formerly with the Northampton County Conservation District on the Ohotton Creek. This stream is normally intermittent in this particular area. It goes underground about a mile north of this site. This site was covered by the glaciers about 13,000 years ago. We have a lot of glacial till. It's an unconsolidated soil type, which is subject to extreme erosion, a slightly larger bank collapse. It's amazing how the gravel is moved and deposited by these stormwater events. So this is an issue that's becoming more prevalent. Well, what can each property owner do? Well, we're using the Lower Mount Bethel Township Welcome Center site, which is 36 acres, to show various mitigation things that can be done on any property. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. We're going to look at the stormwater management plan that we have for this particular site. I really pushed on this site to use every possible mitigation technique that could be used. You'll notice in purple, we have grassy swales. The road is running parallel to where you see the letters H and G. So we have grassy swales picking up the water from the road. We have grassy swales picking up water from the Welcome Center. It's going downhill towards the parking lot. And you'll see a grassy swale going over to a wetland feature. Now, this is only part of it. Besides, the grassy swales were the first thing. One engineer wanted to pipe all this water. Well, if you're piping water, there's no evaporation from pipes. There's no infiltration into the ground. And obviously, there's no take up by plants for transpiration. So we said no pipes. Engineer agreed to that. So we have the grassy swales in place. The Welcome Center itself, which is at letter D, we have a partial green roof, which is taking water from one side of the roof, putting into this green roof, where we actually have a storage reservoir for water, which is then used up by the plants on the green roof. Any excess water coming off the green roof goes into that yellow line, and any downspouts on the other side go by underground piping to an infiltration trench B. That infiltration trench is filled with gravel and cobble. When it fills up, it goes over a leveling device which spreads out the water so that the storm water is not concentrated when it comes out of, for example, a pipe. When you have storm water coming out of a pipe, it's like water coming out of a fire hose. It's extremely erosive. Moving down to the parking area itself slopes into rain gardens. We have rain gardens at I, K, and M. The rain gardens are there for one reason. Off of a parking lot, you have issues with gasoline, oil, other fluids, salt in the wintertime. We don't necessarily want that getting into the groundwater or into a stream or a wetland feature. The rain gardens are collection zones. Then the rain gardens, there's a piping system where if the rain garden fills up, it takes the excess water over to the grassy swale located at A. The grassy swale, once it fills up, transports the water over to O, which is a wetland pond feature. At this particular point, the engineering had recommended that I run 175 feet of pipe to the Delaware River and have everything piped into the Delaware River. After a discussion, we agreed we would create an artificial wetland pond area, and that no water would leave the site except by evaporation, transpiration, and infiltration. It was installed. It works fantastic. Over at H, we have another leveling device, which is an area that's filled with gravel and cobble, and that's taking the water coming off the macadam driveway. With all of these in place, no stormwater hits the Delaware River from this 36-acre site. In order to mitigate stormwater issues, we need individual landowners to try and keep as much stormwater on their site, dispose of it by infiltration, evaporation, or transpiration. This will cut down the amount of water hitting the streams, and this will help mitigate the flooding issues we have that are affecting homes, highways, bridges. One of the things property owners can do is decrease the amount of macadam, or in the upper meadow, I have a macadam trail, but it's permeable macadam. In other words, I can take a bucket of water, and I do this with students. We go out to the macadam. It looks slightly different, okay? But you pour the water on the macadam, and the water goes through the surface. So permeable macadam is a neat thing to use if you have to blacktop or use asphalt. Also, on the one trail going from F to G, it's in yellow if you can see it on your computer, on using wood chips for a trail topping. Now, the neat thing about the wood chips, I get those for free for the township. We have all the area woodcutters drop off their wood chips. They're piled up on part of the property, and I'm using that as trail material, which the road crew spreads. The neat thing of it is, it doesn't cost anything. It's not going to a dump. on using it as a trail surface, and wood chips are a very permeable trail surface. So those are things. And if you could have a meadow on your property, rather than 4 inches of grass or 3 inches of grass, hopefully you're not cutting lower than that, a meadow with different sized plants is a neat infiltration area for any homeowner. Right there at that particular picture, you're looking at the Welcome Center. The flat portion of the roof is the green roof. The slope part facing the flat portion all drains to the green roof, which is planted with sedums and a soil medium. And that uses up the water there. You'll notice the sign in the foreground, that's describing what's happening on the site. So our object at the Welcome Center property is to make sure we have our public education. People ask, why are there weeds growing on the roof? Well, we have that answered on the sign. They're not weeds, but we get this. Hurting water. This is the sign that's there. It explains what's happening with the green roof. It talks about the grassy swales, and it talks about the permeable trails. Okay, here's the sign that talks about the solar panels on the roof. It talks about the solar panels. It talks about all the trenches, the infiltration trenches with the level spreading devices. And you'll notice to the right side, they have a diagram of our stormwater system for the public. Here we are after a major rain event. You'll notice in the rain garden to the right, there's still water that's ponding. You might notice the trail in the background is stone fines, and there was a little bit of erosion there. The road crew keeps after that. You do get some infiltration with stone fines, but it's getting close to impermeable. Rain garden. A lot of people ask, why do I have weeds growing in the middle of the parking lot? Can't we cut those down and pave that over? Well, no, it's a system. And on this particular sign, which was right there by the rain gardens, we're explaining what the process of the rain gardens is to the public. Here we're looking over the wetland feature. And the neat thing about this is, are artificial wetlands and ponds cost effective? To pipe the water off of that parking lot to the Delaware River would have cost $60,000. To put in the wetland area was a total of $660. So it was kind of a cost savings, plus there were additional benefits. We had Just Born come out with some of their volunteers. We planted all kinds of sedges and wetland plants. That's the sign that's posted there. This is when it's pretty full at capacity. We've never had an event where the water flowed out of the pond area. Oh, gee, we have something up there in the center of the picture. What's going on? Let's go look. We have some mallards, 2 males and a female. The road crew said, hey, John, we had some wood fall into this wetlands area. Do we take that out of there? This was an educational event for the road crew. No, we don't take any wood out. Wood belongs in wetland and pond areas. Let's see why. Oh, there's something there. Oh my gosh, we have a pair of wood frogs. What does that mean? They're just swimming? Here's the success about an artificial wetlands pond area. There you see an egg mass laid by those wood frogs. Wildlife wins with a well-planned stormwater system. And you know what? The stormwater infrastructure, it looks a little weedy at times, but it sort of blends in with athletic fields and other public and private uses. The object of this entire talk was we can address stormwater and flooding issues a little at a time. Every parcel makes a difference as to how much water hits our tributaries to streams, which are tributaries to the river. We can all make a difference. Every drop that we stop from flowing off of our site is going to help mitigate flooding issues downstream. So if we all act like we live downstream and we do everything to work together, I think this would be an ideal strategy for reducing the effects of a changing climate.
So one question I was curious about is the timeline. So how long did the plan take in terms of the planning and then the actual implementation?
This was a rather massive project because it was part of a $1.3 million grant from the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission, funding from PPL, land donation from PPL. The aspects that you and I looked at on this site to put in place was basically a year. However, putting the funding package together, I also did 5 miles of trail under this grant. So the entire package did take 5 years. But the individual aspects of it with permitting can be done in less than a year.
And what, if any, obstacles, you talked a little bit, but obstacles were there in sort of implementing the plan? Well,
some of the obstacles were with the professionals that I dealt with at the time. This started back in 2004. We basically completed by 2009. The professionals had their own ideas what green infrastructure was. So it took give and take on my part and their part to realize we could work together and take newer ideas and implement them into the total project. As I mentioned with the engineer, he proposed piping the water from the parking lot to the river. So we had discussions. The following year, he called me up. He said, John, after the project was completed, I took some of my clients to the project to show them what we did. And it was kind of amazing. We both grew through this effort. He had some good input, I had some good input, but we worked together. So that was sort of an obstacle. Other obstacles were with the community. I had one supervisor who, for the first 2 years of the rain gardens in the parking lot, was saying, John, you got to cut the weeds down. You got to maintain this. That was hard to overcome, okay? And to this day, we still get complaints about the green roof. There's weeds growing up there, you need to do something. We did have some foxtail come in and issues of this. Other issues, people, before they saw the results of the project, they kept on saying, green infrastructure costs too much. It can't be done. And that was a tough nut to overcome, okay? But through the completion of the project, we were able to show that green infrastructure can be cost effective and in some cases can be less costly than the other methods. But the big result was, wow, we do not have stormwater leaving this site, okay? Even though we're getting it from the highway and from properties across the highway. That was probably the biggest selling point right there.
Has it spurred any additional action in the community? So like, maybe if you've heard of some property owners who are like, well, they did that there, so maybe I should take additional steps here, or the education of the community kind of spurred this like movement to be adopting some of these strategies.
I'll tell you what, this project has had a very positive effect.
Oh, this sounds like a great project, and your efforts are tremendous.
Well, I'm part of a team, okay?